All right, we're going to head over and just look a little more closely at the potential legal battles that lie ahead. So let's speak to Richard Johnson, lecturer in US politics at Queen Mary University in London. Good evening to you, Richard. Welcome to Times Radio.
Good evening.
Richard, thanks so much for joining us. It feels like it could get really complicated in terms of Trump stalling his legal strategy, what he can and can't do. So let's try and simplify it down. We know that Trump is sort of making several different claims, some of which have stood and some of which haven't. What type of claims is he making, and which ones will stick and which claims won't stick, do you think?
I think the one to keep an eye on is a case that began before the election, which is to do with late arriving postal votes in Pennsylvania. In September, the state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania extended the deadline of receipt of postal votes to Friday evening. Actually, just about an hour ago was the deadline. That would have been an extension from 8 p.m. on Tuesday, which is the normal close of polls. And the state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania did that because they said it was necessary for a fair and free election due to the dismal situation of the U.S. Postal Service at the moment. But the Republicans have challenged that and said that the state Supreme Court doesn't have the right to change election law in Pennsylvania. And in a 4-4 decision in October, the U.S. Supreme Court, the federal Supreme Court, declined to take the case due to a lack of time, but it remains on their docket, which means they could hear it again. And of course, now they have an extra member of the court who might be more inclined to agree with the Republicans' interpretation of the Constitution. And that, I think, for me, that's where Trump might get a victory in the courts.
Okay. Timing-wise, though, we'll obviously enter into a transition period. Now, let's just speculate and say that if Joe Biden is named president-elect, he'll enter this transition period. What does that mean in terms of power, and how will that affect the time frame as to what Donald Trump can and can't contest? Is it? I mean, once Joe Biden is president-elect, is it too late for that decision to be reversed?
There are a few stages between now and Inauguration Day, which is noon, the 20th of January, is when the new president's term begins. The key first major hurdle is the appointment of electors in the state. So the state legislatures have to appoint a slate of electors who reflect the popular vote of their state. And although there's been some discussion that, in a technical sense, the state legislature could ignore the state popular vote, that would end up in the courts, and I don't think that would get very far. So that's probably not a significant worry. The next big stage is when the electors meet for the Electoral College in mid-December. And that means that each of these slates of electors will meet in their state capitals to cast votes for the winner of the state's popular vote. And then the next stage after that, and this is the final stage, is that in January, on the 6th of January, Congress will meet and certify the Electoral College votes that have been sent to them by these different state capitals. And it's that number that gets certified by Congress, which is taken as the official number. And by that, at that point, it's the final stage, and it really can't be challenged after that. Okay, so it's quite a drawn-out process, and I suppose what most people want to know is we've understood from you that, you know, one of the best chances of success in terms of legal action for Donald Trump is the effort to block Pennsylvania from counting mail-in ballots arriving after Election Day. Are there any other areas that concern you and for which Donald Trump has a good case? Not hugely, and I would say actually even on the Pennsylvania case, although Trump might score a victory there, I don't think it's enough to change the result in Pennsylvania because Biden is ahead. So, if we stop the count now, Biden wins. When you're behind, the first rule of a recount or a process of trying to, you want to get more votes to be counted if you're behind. So this strategy might have worked if Trump had a very narrow lead in Pennsylvania and it came down to these late arriving postal votes. But the fact of the matter is actually we've passed that point. So he can challenge it, and he may well do anyway. And that may change the margin of victory for Joe Biden. But it strikes me that unless there's some kind of surprise, it seems unlikely, really, that the Trump campaign can, through legal means, overturn these leads that Biden has in these key states.
There are a couple of other issues that Donald Trump claims here. One is widespread voter fraud. So this, for example, would be one voter turning up to cast their ballot and being told that someone else had done it for them already, or it had already been posted. The other issue that we've been hearing about is the allegation that election monitors for the Republican Party haven't had enough visibility into the process. So let's just row over both of those now, because I think it's important to try and address some of the swirl which is going on from the Trump campaign.
I mean, there have been academic studies done on election fraud in the United States, quite a few of them, because it's been a contentious political issue in the US for the last few years in some states. And the reality is that these studies show that voter fraud is extremely limited, and there are really only a handful of clear-cut cases. You know, you can occasionally find cases where people may have accidentally registered to vote, not fully understanding the laws of their state. For example, if a state prohibits a convicted felon from voting for the rest of their life, as a couple of states have done, they may not know that, and they may register to vote and so on. But the reality is these studies show that sort of organized mass voter fraud is not something that the United States has experienced in its recent history. So it would be pretty extraordinary and unprecedented, really, in modern times, for that to be the case. On the visibility issue, this has to do with the ability of campaigns to monitor the counting of votes. And I think the Trump campaign did win a legal victory over this in Pennsylvania, where they've been admitted. Part of the problem is a concern about intimidation and interruption of the count. And I think there's some grounds for this concern. If we look at the way that the Bush campaign behaved in the 2000 Florida recount, interrupting counts. John Bolton, who later became a figure in both the Bush and Trump administrations, is alleged to have gone into counts, telling them he's from the Bush campaign and it's time to stop counting the votes. He didn't have any legal backing to do that. So I think, the concern about intimidating poll workers is one that should be taken seriously. But, at the end of the day, the Trump campaign has been given access when they sought this case in Pennsylvania.
All right, well, that's some good perspective. So although we might expect to hear about legal challenges being pursued further by Donald Trump, it shouldn't ultimately affect the outcome of the election. It would take too long to do that. So the whole process won't be, in other words, thrown into a spin if there is legal action taken by Trump, unless it's something that we haven't heard about already.
I think that's right. I don't see, with the leads that Biden now has in the remaining states, I just think that he's got too much of a cushion now for Trump to throw him off track.
Okay, well, I really appreciate your thoughts on that and your expertise. Richard Johnson, lecturer in US politics at Queen Mary University in London. Thanks for joining us on Times Radio. Well, this is Kait Borsay on Times.